Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to take a look at this model here. This is the Eachine Lizard 1055. Now it's a little bit of an interesting animal, this little one, because it's also got a DVR on board as well that's going to record in 720p 60 frames a second. Now we've looked at its little brother in a previous video. That was the Lizard 95. That was quite a few months ago now, back last year, and it was one of my favourite little quadcopters. It was a very agile, fast, well set up little model and very, very good fun to fly. Now, if you're interested in these kind of smaller models, particularly if you're looking for ideas of things under 250 grams, and this will absolutely fit into that category, then go and have a look at the Mini Quadcopters playlist on the channel. All of my reviews and details are in there, so you can have a look. And all of the videos that I produce are dated, so you always know that you're looking at the current one, or if it's an older one, how old it actually is. Now the specs on this thing are pretty impressive when you look at them on the website. So this is 130mm by 130mm by about 53. It talks about a weight of 80 grams, but I've already showed you what the weight is with the supplied battery. An F4 based flight controller with an integrated on-screen display. It has a dampened IMU. We've looked at those kind of things on some of the Holybro Kakute flight controllers in the past, and it's a great idea. It means that even if there's vibration on the model, then it's not going to get into the accelerometers and gyros, so that you're going to get a smoother flying experience and not have to mess around with notch filters and tuning to get rid of any little behaviors you don't like. Motors on this are 1104 6000 kV, running 60mm four-bladed props. The ESCs on this are a 4-in-1 setup in the middle of the stack, 28 amp ESCs running D-Shot 600. The camera itself is a little 720p camera with a 130 degree field of view, which is just about enough for a nice comfortable FPV experience for me. The DVR records in 720p, so this little guy not only will allow you to fly around in very small areas, but it'll also allow you to capture the footage on board. Last time we looked at something like that, it was the Eachine 4-in-1 stack. We built that out onto a little quadcopter at the end of 2017, and that was kind of a full-size version. They've also been working on shrinking it down because it fits really nicely into this frame, and the camera on this is dinky compared to the size of the camera that we're having to deal with on that build. Video transmitter on here goes from 25 to 200 milliwatts, a switchable 48 channel video transmitter. The battery supplied is a 550 milliamp hour 4S pack, and it has a buzzer and LEDs at the back as well, and lots of anodized metal on here that makes this frame very, very tough indeed. Unboxing it is very nice. Comes in this box with lots of protection. You get the quadcopter, you get some spare props, you get the battery and a couple of other pieces too. The manual is just like all of the other Eachine Lizard manuals. It's fine for what you need it for, and it does go through the setup for all the Betaflight pieces too. So let's quickly connect it up to Betaflight and just see what we can see. The nice thing is it does power the receiver when you power it from the USB port, so you don't have to plug the battery in to buy the receiver, which I'm a big fan of. Gyro accelerometer and, interestingly, a barometer on this little guy. None of the ports are configured apart from UART3 for a serial receiver. That's set by default for S-Bus. D-Shot 600 is set up. By default, motor stop is set up on this as well. That's probably not a bad idea on a quad of this size. It's very easy for it to come down in grass and to make a mess of things. And the only things that are turned on are the LED strip and the on-screen display. Tuning looks like this. And we're running Betaflight 3.2 or later on this thing, so surprise, surprise, Betaflight's doing a pretty good job of everything anyway. And the modes by default were just set for arm for auxiliary 1 and angle for the middle position of auxiliary 2. So I set it up for my standard thing. I like to initially power up and everything in angle mode, have the middle position as horizon and the top as rate mode. Flying this model is a lot of fun, even though it weighs quite a bit because there's an awful lot of metal on this frame. It really moves with that 4S battery. The camera itself is doing a pretty good job. The only thing I would have liked was maybe a little bit more dynamic range, but it is a relatively small lens on such a small little camera, and when you take that into consideration, it's doing absolutely fine. The camera for me could have been a little bit brighter when it is looking at a lot of sky, finding that the ground is a little bit dark, but it's perfectly flyable. And the DVR footage is pretty good too. There isn't a lot of dropping out or noise or pixelation. So this is the smallest craft that I've ever flown that gives you some form of HD recording inside the frame. Now the question of course is, well, what kind of latency is that running at? How bad is it? Now we recently looked at a couple of action cameras where the latency glass to glass between the image appearing and appearing on an FPV screen was in the region of about 150, 160 milliseconds. This is very, very quick. I'm guessing it's because it's 720p, not 1080p. It looks like Eachine have really worked hard here to keep the latency as low as possible. It's only about another 8 to 10 milliseconds slower than a dedicated FPV camera. So only the most accomplished pilots would feel any kind of lag at all. Personally, I didn't feel like I had any disconnection from the model. It was performing just like I was using a standard FPV camera. So in summary, what do I think? Well, that camera's pretty good. It works nice, but again can be a little dark. That mini circular polarized antenna at the back worked amazingly well, and I'm potentially going to pop that onto some of the other smaller models that I have here. They're available as a separate piece, and I think I might be ordering a couple in the next day or two. There is an awful lot of technology in this model. The DVR, the ESCs, that flight controller, the camera, that vibration isolated IMU, and it's all nicely put together. I like the use of the real FR Sky receiver too. There isn't any reason why they should be using some of the clones now. It is very, very quick. So on the 4S battery that is supplied, it will go like stink, and you can get an awful lot of speed out of this. It is very tough. Unfortunately, I've had one little accident that has slightly damaged it, and that was flying around in the local field. I decided, fractionally too late, I was just going to fly under the goalpost rather than over it, and I caught the back of the frame. Now that broke a couple of pieces of the carbon fibre, and it also caught the little stubby antenna as well. Now nothing was really damaged, but it did snap the bits of carbon fibre off. But that does show that having this very high central piece, if you're not used to it, does mean that you can occasionally, particularly when you're cranked over, that bit is the piece that's going to slam into stuff, and you're potentially going to snap those bits off, or you're going to pop the antenna out the back of the model. There's an awful lot of 3D printed pieces on here, so hopefully those files are going to be available. So if you need to reprint a bit that got snapped, that's going to be easy to do. Couple of things to be aware of. That LED buzzer panel at the back is only held on with a piece of double-sided foam. I personally recommend popping some kind of cable tie over the top. I think over time, particularly in hot weather, that might come undone, and then it's flopping around very close to the end of the rear propellers. The SD card is very tricky to remove because it's so compact here. Getting it in is not too bad, but then getting it out, you kind of need tweezers to wiggle it out of position. Just like lots of other Eachine models we've looked at recently, the FPV channels don't match the traditional channel layout, so if you're running Fat Shark Band 1, which is what I tend to use the majority of the time, then that isn't going to be band F1, it'll be somewhere else, so keep the manual handy. And the last comment I'll make is, with that 4S power, this is not a model that I'd recommend as something to move on to as your first real quadcopters, in inverted commas, after flying an indoor model. This is spectacularly fast and can get into trouble really, really quickly. And when it's out of horizon or acro mode, it becomes a real handful. Some of the reviewers who have had the model have noticed that it shimmied on full power, and I haven't had that here, so I don't know whether I just happen to have a good one or they have changed something on this model since those reviewers had it. And the last thing I'll mention is that the current sensor doesn't appear to be connected. You might have spotted that in the FPV footage, which is a bit of a shame because all the electronics are in there already, and in the manual it does talk about how you can wire that up, and in my opinion that should have been wired up out the factory. Now that means for pilots that are very accomplished, that's looking for a machine that's going to be challenging and fun to fly, then this is fantastic. But for those of you that are interested in getting DVR footage, 720p footage, out of a little quadcopter as you fly around, then this is going to be worth a look. If you found that video useful or like the content, then please hit the like and subscribe button down below. If you want to go the extra step, you can become a Patreon of the Painless 360 channel and help provide support for what I do here. All the videos created here are put into playlists, so if you're interested in a particular topic, have a look at the playlist, and they all are organised in there to make them easier to use. If you're not sure if there's a video for your particular problem or topic you want to know more about, then add Painless 360 to the Google search term that you're interested in, and that should find the video, article or content about the particular thing that you're interested in having a look at.